What an afternoon at the JMA Wireless Dome. The comeback kids, the cardiac Cuse, does it again. Syracuse 38, Virginia Tech 31 in overtime. As we welcome you to Syracuse football postgame presented by Krause Health, the exclusive healthcare partner for SU Athletics. You got Brent Axe, you got Emily Leiker, we got you, we got our Syracuse Sports Insiders who were very roller coastery is how I will put it during this matchup at the JMA Wireless Dome this afternoon. Syracuse down 21-3. Now, this is after the Pitt game, and they're down 21-3. And you're like, whoa, boy, here. This is a sinking ship here. But Syracuse turns it around. A huge touchdown by Justus Ross-Simmons. Hey, where you been all our lives, Justus Ross-Simmons? Heck of a first catch for him, Emily. A 55-yard touchdown. And then the comeback starts, and this turns into one heck of a football game at the Dome. And for the third consecutive season, Syracuse is bowl eligible, though Fran Brown and some of the players are like, meh, that's the expectation around here, right? But we're still getting used to that as those that had seen Syracuse not even go to a bowl game for a number of years, let alone be bowl eligible for 3 straight years. So it was an incredible day, an incredible game. And Emily, I guess I'll start this with you here. Sports, right? We saw sports at the Dome today. What were you thinking during this roller coaster ride? I'll use that phrase again that we witnessed today.
Yeah, I don't remember at what point. It was really early. It might even have been pregame. But at one point, I did lean over to Chris. There was a couple times I leaned over to Chris. I feel like I've tweeted that like 6 times today. But it's true. We were leaning over to each other a lot today. But I said, I believe it was pregame. I was like, you know what? I'm kind of getting the feeling that this is going to end up, or it was really early in the first half, but I'm kind of getting the feeling this is going to end up like the Purdue game in 2022, which was a light scoring game for much of the first 3 quarters. And then fourth quarter was just like action packed, absolutely exploded. And it did kind of end up being like that. Obviously you have Virginia Tech's kind of news about drones and Tootin being out just right before kickoff, and Syracuse obviously getting a different look out on defense from what they were expecting across the line of scrimmage, and that mixing some things up. But crazy game, props to Syracuse for coming out and making the adjustments that it did in the second half. And I'm sure we'll talk a little bit about what we heard those adjustments were and how they were made. But yeah, certainly when it got to, it was only 14-3 at half, correct? Yeah, I believe that's correct. Yeah, 14-3 at half, and then quickly went to the 21-3 at the beginning of the third quarter. And then they like you said, that Justus Ross-Simmons catch, his first catch of the season, his first target of the season. I went and looked on Pro Football Focus, and he had 0 targets through the other 4 games he's played, and that was his first target, and he took it 55 yards to the house.
Coach Ross, Emmanuel Ross, for the wide receivers, said to him on the sideline, "We need a play." Right? Coach Ross Douglas said, "We need a play," right? And Justus Ross-Simmons said, "I got you," right? And there you go. That was it. And that starts the comeback. So all of a sudden, Ross has a big play. In the first half, Trevor Pena had the dropsies. There were several drops. He had a bunch of them, unfortunately. He takes a 41-yard play, which sets up another touchdown, and now it's 21-17. And now you're saying, okay, things are starting to get weird again here in the Dome. And I said this in my prediction, and we were joking around in the press box during the game. Stock up, stock down on Brent's prediction that Syracuse was going to beat. I was the lone wolf that picked Syracuse this week, but what I felt would propel Syracuse to victory in this type of game were turnovers. So they get a turnover, they cash that in for a touchdown. Now Virginia Tech goes down and scores again, and it just turns into this back and forth game that we saw it. Syracuse did outscore Virginia Tech 35-17 in the second half after that 14-3 final, and it ends in overtime on a turnover as well. And Emily, that has been this defense this year. It has been bend but don't break. Right? Fidel Diggs, 4th down, Georgia Tech makes the play they need. UNLV, overtime, makes the tackle that holds UNLV to a field goal. Syracuse scores a touchdown. LaQuinn Allen also the winning touchdown in that overtime game. And then Syracuse scores. LaQuinn Allen, who had 121 yards in this game, and Syracuse got the running game going after that had not been a thing for this team. They're like 120th in the country coming in running the football. They needed to revive that. He scores, and a fumble caused by Marlowe Wax, who made every defensive play in the world today. He had a couple huge sacks in this game, that fumble in overtime. So the impact of getting Marlowe Wax back, Emily, getting bowl eligible for the third straight year, and winning a game like this, it's reversing the trend. Now, it's one game here, right? But you've got to win games like this to reverse the narrative and the trend that Syracuse has been bad in November, right? And they have. They've been 12-32. They're now 13-32 in the month of November since joining the ACC. There was so much from our Syracuse Sports Insiders, people watching the game. Oh, here we go again. Oh, it's the November curse. Like, they just can't win games like this. Well, as we heard Fran and the players talk about afterwards, it's a mentality. We saw the relentless and dart really come through. And it was funny. I asked LeQuinn Allen about this after the game, and he's like, did you see us when we were working out in the snow? Mm-hmm. And it's that work that they put in that comes through in these moments. And you've got to win games like this to reverse a narrative. And lo and behold, they did. They beat UNLV in overtime. Remember, earlier this year in the Dome, Stanford went the other way. They drove down the field and kicked a field goal at the end here. So in November, Emily, you want to see progress. You want to see steps forward. You want to see, okay, we've got to learn from that first experience, and all that came out. And a lot of people said in previous administrations, I didn't have faith, to steal a phrase from a prior coach, that they could do this. And even when it was looking pretty dark out there, Syracuse dug in and found a way. And that's how you reverse trends, and that's how you reverse narratives, and that's how you get bowl eligible and get people to buy in what you're selling. And it all comes back to that dart mentality.
Yeah, and you know what I thought was interesting that we heard early this week going into this game was we're talking about that November narrative with the players, and Aranda was like, we hadn't really thought about it. Like, that's not something we paid a ton of attention to, right? Like, it's external noise. But he said that Fran, like, really, like, pretty much straightforward said it to them. Like, people don't think you can win in November. Like, that is the reputation you have, is that we're just going to go out and lose all these games in November. And that was interesting to me because, right, like, we usually come into Monday press conferences and Fran's like, I'm just focusing on today. I'm focused on today. I'm focused on today. All of that. So I asked him post-game today, I was like, look, like, you are a very live in the moment coach. Like, what made you want to talk about this reputation that precedes you, that has nothing to do with you, but that obviously a lot of the guys on your team kind of hold right now and have held for the past few seasons? And he went back to, like, it's kind of mantra for, like, his whole coaching tenure so far here is, like, it's about the history. And, like, you know what? There's good history. There's bad history. Pitt game is going to be bad history. This is going to be good history. Like, all of that gets mixed in and is a part of a team's story. And so certainly Syracuse is trying to change this part of its story, this November narrative that it's kind of created over the past few years.
Well, and what strikes me, it's not a LeQuinn Allen or a Marlowe Wax or a Justin Barron or an OG that's bringing it up. You know who's brought it up the most? Kyle McCord. Mm-hmm. Kyle said it after the Pitt game that we can't let this happen again, and he touched on it again in this press conference about, you're down 21-3. Prior teams may have just given up at that point, right? So for Kyle to drop in here and be well aware of that narrative, somebody's in his ear, and he's aware of that he is here to fix that, right? And this was the first game Kyle McCord did not have 300 yards passing, but we mentioned the drops and some of the things that happened. Let's see, 24 of 35, 280, 2 touchdowns. He did have that interception right before halftime, and that was it. They had that interception. Darrell Gill Jr. just flat out drops the football. Defense, as much as they made the plays when they needed to, tackling was an issue. Virginia Tech comes out 14-3. Remember, Drones is out. Tootin is out. Starting quarterback, starting running back, not out there. Crowd is starting to turn on you. The Boo Birds were out at the Dome today. Students, look, you guys have been great. Didn't show today. The whole upper deck was empty. It was Halloween, that big of a party at Syracuse. Like, couldn't even show up for this game. Like, the entire upper deck is empty. So they had to turn that around and figure it out, because a lot of not the turnover problems, but some of the issues they had against Pittsburgh and even NC State the week before, Emily, getting that offense generated, defense missing tackles, special teams. Okay, they had 4 penalties on special teams today and had an extra point blocked. Now, I'll say this. some replays probably show, Emily, that Virginia Tech probably should have been called for leaping. I got to really study the film, if you will. I remember Syracuse got called for that, and that was pretty controversial that they were over the center on a call earlier this year. A lot of people said that Virginia Tech probably should have got a flag for that. But guess what? There were 2 other kicks in this game that almost got blocked that were not penalties, right? Special teams, it has been an issue for this team and almost was again today. One way or the other, there was an extra point they're kicking at the end of the game to tie it. That could have been the winning kick had that the kick not been blocked earlier in the game.
Right. Well, and should be noted that they were on their 3rd kicker today. They put Jackson Kennedy, the Cornell transfer, out there. So now we've cycled through Brady Denneberg, who still does the kickoffs, but has been taken off field goal duties since week 3 of the season, week 4. I think it was the Stanford game. And then they had Jaden O for a couple weeks, and now they've gone to Denneberg. And so how that kind of progresses through the rest of this season and into the off season is going to be interesting, because they need someone more consistent than who they have. They don't have someone that they can rely on at that position. And, Jackson Kennedy got the job done today, but that's why they go for 2. That's why those other things happen. They go for it on a long 4th, whatever. So that's an interesting situation.
So despite all those issues, though, they dig in, they find a way. And there was a lot of those boom plays, the Justus Ross-Simmons touchdown, the Pena play, the turnover that leads to the score. So you need those type of plays, and you need those type of players to make those plays. And that's what we saw from Syracuse today. And the most welcome one was Justus Ross-Simmons, Emily. And he was pretty simple in his press conference. He's kind of getting used to being in the spotlight there. His answers were pretty short and to the point here. But we're 12 minutes in and haven't even mentioned this while we're on the wide receivers. Guess who was in the house today, everybody? Zeed Haynes. He was there. He was not in uniform, but he's back? ? Is he, if he's on that sideline and he's out there for warm-ups, is Fran Brown going to release the balloons and make that pronouncement that Zeed Haynes is back? And they need a deep threat, Emily. And Justus Ross-Simmons today, he's not quite the burner that Zeed Haynes is, but he showed he can get down the field and open up the passing game a little bit for this team. A welcome addition. And he mentioned that it was frustrating with his hamstring, the procedure to come back. Fran told him to be patient. He would have his day. It took longer than they expected, but when they needed him the most, there he was. And I thought that podium was a real representation of college football today. You had 2 stalwart veterans that have been around for a while, LaQuinn Allen and Marlowe Wax. There's as good of an example as you can get out of the portal in Kyle McCord, and a guy in Justus Ross-Simmons, who's not only a transfer, but a local product. Rochester kid makes the big play that swings the game around and has himself a heck of a debut, if you will. His first targets today ends up with 4 catches, 88 yards, including that 55-yard score.
Right. Well, and then you had a big second half from LaQuinn Allen too, right? And that's the adjustment that Fran Brown asked offensive coordinator Jeff Nixon to make at halftime. That's what we saw him yelling on the headset about on the sideline. It's what he went into the locker room and said. He said, get the ball in the best football player's hands. And in his opinion, LaQuinn's the best football player on the team. And that's not something that he just said offhandedly today, as a reaction to LaQuinn having another big game. That is a message he has consistently brought up all season. And you know what? I think he's right.
2 biggest plays of the year are by LaQuinn Allen. Yeah.
Right. When you get the ball in it's just insane to watch his yards after contact go up and up and up. And what's even crazier too is this was his first game over 100 rushing yards this season, which is ridiculous and should not be the case. And, we've talked about it most post-game pods on here, and it's come up most post games too, where Brown has said, we need to get the ball to Allen more. And they haven't done a great job of that. It gets said, and then we start the next game and they throw it all 3 of the first downs in their opening drive, or all 3 downs to start their opening drive, and then have to go and switch to Allen later. So I'm curious if this performance and just where this offense is at right now, if maybe next game we see the first half finally switch to being a little bit more run heavy, or at least a little bit more balanced after that performance by LaQuinn.
Speaking of Nixon, Emily, I want to highlight one comment. We're going to get to more from our Syracuse Sports Insiders coming up here. But Mike C. says, Brent, I sit up by the coach's booth. Jeff Nixon came out of the booth with tears in his eyes, very emotional and happy about this one. And yeah, people have questioned the running game at times. Remember, no Yassine Willis in this game. Okay. Mm-hmm. Will Nixon out for the year with a Lisfranc injury. It is all on the quint. Jaden Hart is the backup. You get a little bit of Malachi James, perhaps, who's a freshman and just finding his way. It is all on LeQuint. His first 100-yard game. And oh, by the way, LeQuint Allen is now the all-time leader in Syracuse history of receptions by a running back. He passed Antoine Bailey. The previous record was 92. He passed Antoine Bailey for that today. So while the running game has not been consistent, when you need LeQuint Allen, he knocks on the door and he does it. The UNLV touchdown, this play, there's been other runs and first downs he had to get. Now, LeQuint, the motions got the best of him a little bit when he got to the sideline. It's a first down, right? They're on this final drive in regulation, and he gets this first down, and then all of a sudden a flag comes out, and you're just like, okay, come on. What's going on here, right? This the timing of this. And look, this is the internet. This is a podcast, so I'm going to quote Fran Brown directly here. When we asked Fran what he told LeQuint, he said that was dumb shit. It's like, yeah, don't do that, right? Like that. So LeQuint, who even though he's a senior and everything, they have these moments where something comes out of his mouth. The ref, I don't know exactly what he said over there or what was happened to get the penalty, but you can't have those setbacks in a game where it felt like setbacks were always around the corner, if you will. It's like of all things, that's what's going to cost this team this game, but ended up didn't it. And LeQuint was the guy who is vaulting over the pile and scoring. And when you need him the most, he comes through. And the other guy that comes to mind there, Emily, is, man, Marlowe Wax comes back, gets back in the flow last week, and Syracuse is back at home for the first time in a month. And every time the defense needed a play, he was the guy that made it. And it just goes to show you how big of a leader he is for that team and how big of a playmaker he is. And it reverses another narrative. Instead of losing players as you go down the year, Syracuse gets to add a guy like Marlowe Wax back to the mix, and it could not be bigger.
Right. Well, and he made a conscious choice to come back and make that. That's something I talked to Brandon Hall, their head athletic trainer, about this week, is that they gave Marlowe two options. And I mean, he didn't explicitly say it, but what I gathered from the response was it was sit out this season and we can slow walk you through a return and bring you back for next year if you want to take another red shirt, or just send you on to the pros, or you can come back. We can get this going and try and bring you back for this season. And Marlowe chose to do that. And, I think that's completely in line with the character we've seen out of him the past few years he's been here. I mean, like we were saying, the week he got hurt, like this is the heart of the defense, and this is going to be a tough guy to replace. And Marlowe didn't want to be replaced. He wanted to be back out there to close this season with his team.
Another Syracuse Sports Insider comment that I wanted to highlight here, because I think it speaks to something bigger, from Michael Antonio, who's one of our new Syracuse Sports Insiders. Welcome aboard, my friend. And Michael Antonio's been a long-time watcher of the post-game shows, and remember him from when we used to take Facebook comments, which we don't anymore. We just take our Syracuse Sports Insiders. That's it. You guys get exclusive opportunities to commentate here on the post-game show and on the Syracuse Sports Podcast. But he says this, Emily, I expected a bowl season, so anything else at this point is a bonus in Fran's year one. And I know they kind of brushed past that, and I get what Fran said. We expected that. That's not the mission. It's part of the journey. Like, he kind of caught himself at the presser because he was just like, bowl game, who cares? I didn't think he had to apologize for that. If that's what he believes, then go with that. But I have to take a moment here, because while they expect that, we're still getting used to it. Okay. This is going to be the first time Syracuse has been in 3 straight bowl games, if I'm not mistaken, since the 90s. I could be wrong on that, but double check me on that. But it's not something they've done often. Okay. To expect a bowl game, that's how things got off track for a while. After Pasqualoni, under Greg Robinson, Doug Marrone got it back somewhat, couple of bowl games. Scott Schaefer had one in his first year, and then it was so sporadic under Dino, right? That is the expectation, and that you're here in November, the cursed month, and you clinched a bowl game. that's a mark. I know that's nobody's handing out trophies for something like that, but that is another step forward. That's how you break the November hex. When that's just, Marlowe Wax said it after the game too, Emily. It's like, yeah, we expect that, right? That's part of the process here. We build that in. It's not going to a bowl game. It's what kind of bowl game are we going to, right? And they want to aim higher and try and get in the ACC championship game. That's still, a remote possibility this season. The ACC is wacky, so we'll see how this thing plays out. But we're still getting used to that. And it's for a Syracuse fan, that's got to be comforting to be like, yeah, 6 wins. We expect 6 wins. It's not like even last year, they barely got over the finish line to 6 wins and get the bowl eligibility. So to expect it and to see this team just kind of like, brush it off their shoulder, like, yeah, great, we got a bowl game. Like that's got to be a good feeling if you're a Syracuse fan out there. And that is, again, another step and a sign of progress. And to do it in year one, that's a big thing for Fran to, kind of put on his belt.
Great. Well, and they're still well on track for an 8-4, if not better, finish. I mean, they have Boston College, which I think is a beatable team, is definitely a beatable team. It's on the road, so of course that adds another element. They have Cal. Cal's an interesting one, and at Cal makes it more interesting. I'm not quite sure about that one yet. And then you have UConn at home and Miami at home, which obviously will be a big game to end out the season, given how Miami is. They survived Duke today. I know that one was close for a while, and then I believe the Hurricanes pulled ahead pretty well. But that an 8-4 finish, even with that Pitt loss, and even with another couple losses that record would require, would still be a fantastic finish for this team based on the past 2 seasons and in a first year head coach's first season. Like that would be a great finish, and they could finish higher than that too.
And you want to bank that in year one. I'm not doubting what Fran Brown can do in recruiting and the portal and what they build into 2025, but next year, that's a bear of a schedule that Syracuse has. It's going to be tougher to expect bowl eligibility next season, just flat out. I know that teams come and go and players come and go, but some of the places and the teams you're playing next year, they're going to be good and they're going to be a challenge. And you mentioned it, a lot of them are on the road. Syracuse goes to Dallas next year. They play Tennessee to start the year in Atlanta. They go to Georgia Tech, Atlanta to play Georgia Tech. They are scheduled to go to South Bend and play Notre Dame. And a few other tough, I think they go to Miami next year, if I'm not mistaken. That's a tough schedule next year. So any of these accomplishments and things that you can bank and say, we did this year, you do have to take a moment and kind of mark that off and say, hey, they did that, because each season tells a different story. And the story of this team, no matter what, is bowl game. We're hoping Pop-Tarts Bowl. Still got my fingers crossed on that one, but I don't know.
Yeah, it was a blow to see the ESPN projections this week have Pittsburgh. Yeah. Both of them had Pittsburgh in the Pop-Tart Bowl, and I was like, man, if Syracuse had won that game, but they bounced back, so they're still in the picture for a higher tier bowl, which is good for them.
It was such a wild day at the Dome. I just want to go over a couple of things from this one. So we mentioned McCord was 24-35, 280, 2 touchdowns and a pick. LaQuinn Allen, 21 carries, 121 yards. He had 3 touchdowns on the day. Trevor Payne does end up with 7 catches for 83 yards. We mentioned Justus Ross-Simmons with 88 yards on the day, 4 catches, including the 55-yard touchdown. Virginia Tech put up 455 yards to Syracuse's 410. Virginia Tech had the ball for 34 minutes and 18 seconds. That defense really had to hang in there and bend but don't break, as we mentioned, because the offense just got off the field too quickly a lot. And that's something too, Emily. Look, I know the cliche is it's not how you start, it's how you finish. But this offense has to take a look at making adjustments is great. And they did that with LaQuinn Allen today, and you got to give credit where credit is due. But it's nice to score in the first half, too, and take control of a game and get your offense flowing and not have to make those adjustments and figure things out. So that's something to keep an eye on. This is 3 straight games that Syracuse has struggled to come out of the gate. It's one thing to do it on the road, but back home today, they just couldn't get the engines cranking here, and they're down 21-3, and this thing almost got away with them. So I think that's something that you want to keep an eye on going forward here, on the road, at home, wherever the case may be. what can they do? And maybe Justus Ross-Simmons adds to that, and we'll see if Zeke Haynes comes back. He was back around the team today. What adjustments do you make at this point of the season when everybody's seen you on film, everybody kind of knows, the tells and the ticks of the offense and what McCord does, but what little tweaks can you make to maybe come out a little faster in some games and take control of things? Minor thing, I guess, if they're always figuring out ways to make adjustments, but you can score in the first half too. They allow it. The scoreboard works.
Yes, for sure. And it'll be interesting, right? Because we had talked a little bit with McCord early in the week, about the idea of has SU's offense become too predictable? Are they doing too much of the same thing? Is he hitting the same targets on too many of the same downs? Because that's something that Pitt had brought up in its post game, is that, from the film, we kind of knew where Kyle was going to go every single time. And so might be a coincidence, might be not, might be a little bit of both, that you have Justus Ross-Simmons pop up today, see a couple other new faces in that mix offensively. So we'll see what else they do going forward.
Tackling would be good too, here and there. That's been an issue with this team. They straddle that line. They make the play when they need to, but there was, everybody misses tackles, but this has been a consistent issue for this team, and we mentioned special teams as well. Okay, Emily, a couple orders of business before we go. We're going to hear what some Syracuse Sports Insiders have to say. We'll do that shortly. I did check the voicemail line, and the phones are working in Florida. Okay.
Woo!
And then we have an announcement to make. We have an announcement to make. So stay tuned for that. We will do that shortly. But first, as you can see on your screen, being a Syracuse Sports Insider means you can text me directly, and boy, were you texting me during this game. But that's what it's there for. I want to hear what's on your mind. I want to ride the wave of emotion with you during these games and hear what you're thinking, your opinions, your questions, your comments, not only during games, but during the week, anytime, and what you want us to ask coaches at press conferences and what you want us to write about and talk about on the Syracuse Sports Podcast. Sign up by texting the word orange to 315-847-3895. You can hit that link on your screen as well if you're watching on YouTube. It's joinsubtext.com/Syracuse Sports. And Buddy P leads us off. Emily says, the November curse is broken. One game.
They did win a game last November, too. They won the Pitt game last November.
They did. It's going to take a little bit more to break the curse.
Get a couple more.
They've got the recipe going here to get this thing going better. Rob says it felt like Pittsburgh's defense was going to beat us 2 weeks in a row for a while, but they found the offensive mojo.
Yep.
How much did Pitt really, air quotes, expose, I guess, last week? Like I said, you're this deep into the season. People have seen film that can pick up on trends. Pitt just did a really good job of getting in McCord's grill and making him turn the ball over, even though they only blitzed, I think, 35% of the time. It felt like 99% of the time with the way they were getting after him. But what do you think about that, Emily? What did they really expose last week?
Well, I take that comment more as was Syracuse still trying to shake off some of the gross feeling from having an offensive performance like that, less than did Pitt do something that specifically showed other opposing defenses what to do. But I think, I said, it was interesting to hear Pitt say that they felt what Syracuse's offense was going to do was very predictable based on film. And so then, if I'm Virginia Tech hearing that, I'm going back and looking at all of the film again and then looking exactly at what Pitt did to stop those things on film. So that might have been why the first half was a little groggy. But I take that comment more as it was just the hangover from having such a poor offensive performance.
Yeah, such a bad game. You get beat twice in a row.
Yes.
Virginia Tech does have a great pass rush, and there were some things they could do that Pitt did last week. But the thing about that Pitt comment, too, is not everybody can do what Pitt does. Not everybody has as smart a coach as Pat Narduzzi and has the personnel to do what Pitt did. Syracuse had to get over that hangover, and when it was 21-3, I think Rob hit on something there with that comment. But they dug in, they found a way, and sports was happening at the Dome today. Speaking of other sports, Mahir says, I needed this after what the Yankees did to me a couple days ago. Great win for this team, Fran, and to get it at home after 40 days. Hope the team can use the momentum to keep going. Are we going to see a Syracuse football game in October next year? 2 years in a row. They've
At
been
home?
gone
No.
the whole month. My goodness.
Not if
Steve
the
N.
ACC has its way.
Well, not only the ACC, there's like high school playoffs and all kinds of band competitions going on at the Dome.
Yeah.
And the Dome's busy in October, but it'd be nice to have like one football game that month. From Steve N., who says 35 second half points, Justus Ross-Simmons, breakout game, Pena was clutch, and the D shine when they needed to, and then says what we all did at the end of this one. Phew. From Nate, who says, Fran effing Brown. No other comment. We're all haters when they're down, but man, do they figure it out more than they don't. They have figured it out more than they haven't this year, right? Stanford game, stubbed their toe. Pitt game, and they just got blown out. They weren't in a close game in that situation, but so far, it does feel like they have figured it out more than they haven't, right?
And save for the Pitt game, they like to be an underdog. They were a 4-point underdog going into this game against the spread. They like to be an underdog. That's when they beat Georgia Tech. That's when they beat UNLV. When they beat now Virginia Tech. So they like to be an underdog.
Make them a dog at Boston College next week, just for the sake of it, right? And listen, one of us is 7-1 in our picks.
I picked them to cover, so I get
did.
Credit.
All right, you got that. But man, you're going to give me 4 points at home. I'm just going to take that.
Right.
That's people like, you pick Syracuse. I'm like, part of the reason I picked Syracuse, I got 4 points at home.
Well,
like,
now that you got the yelling before I got the yelling, I'm getting the yelling now. So.
From our guy Randy, the newlywed. You have to give it to Syracuse for being resilient. They could have given up a few times during this game. Great job by the defense for forcing the turnover. Jim says this, I had faith the whole time. Sure you did. It wasn't me who started to write in the third quarter that it's the same story every year. Penalties, drops, missed tackles, great effort to close out the game. And he says this too, can we give LeQuint the 44 now? A little late for that, right? I don't think LeQuint's going to be around next year. I think he's going to make a run at the National Football
Football League. I don't think
so either. So we'll have to save
and he
that
likes his one. He likes his number one.
He likes his number one. Maybe for one game. I've never been opposed to that. Like senior day, final game, wear the 44 for a day.
If they did like throwback jerseys with it too, that'd be cool.
That'd be sweet. Which throwback jersey though? I would pick the McNabb era.
I didn't think that far out of my comment.
I would pick the McNabb era jerseys if we're going throwbacks. That's just me. A couple more here from Victor, who says, please have Nate pick against Syracuse the rest of the year. I could start a GoFundMe page if necessary. LOL. Our good friend Nate Mink, who's now, I believe, 2-6 in his predictions this year.
He's won the past 2 years. He is not doing very hot this year.
Not this year, buddy. And Larry F. Says, anyone out on Fran Brown after this year needs to really think about what he's done. If any other Syracuse team in my recent memory would have laid down and died after losing to Pitt. And he adds this, and going down 21-3 in this game, win or lose, this staff is not the problem. Emily, as we used to say in the radio world, to the phones we go. Ooh. Our man is on the secret voicemail line. Let's see what Rockin' Ron had to say after this one.
Hey, Brent. Emily, you're Rockin' Ron in Florida. Woo! Glad we won that game. But I'm not a happy camper all around. Because we could have easily lost that game due to just about all facets of the game. Our offensive line, I still say, is atrocious. I don't know who our coach is, but he better get working more and more with him. And I'll tell you, if it wasn't for LeQuint Allen, oh, what a running back. He is fantastic. And finally we get to see Simmons perform, and he is all what they said he was. We'll be using him more, I betcha. And McCord, sometimes he looks like he's so shaky and he's afraid to throw the ball. He waits a little bit too long, and by then the D-back comes up on it and knocks it away, or that's where he would get intercepted. But he finally got back in the groove, and thank God he did, because we pulled some scores out. And the defense, I swear sometimes they pick up rocks off if they had to. But anyway, thank God we got Marlowe Wax back. He is the nucleus, and he's the heart and soul of that team. And when we need a big play, he comes through, and he did today. And we can appreciate him. But we'll take this win and chalk it up and puts us into our bowl availability. And looking forward to next week's game. Hopefully we can still keep putting this team together. Looking forward to it. Have a good one. Talk to you later. Bye.
The one and only Rock and Ron. I didn't save this comment, Emily, but somebody said, I wish we had a camera on Rock and Ron in the fourth quarter and overtime. Can we get a little webcam action of Rock and Ron taking in that one? All right, ladies and gentlemen, we have one more order of business here. And I'm going to turn the floor over to Emily. She has an announcement for everybody.
Oh, we said we weren't going to cry on the pod, Brent. Now
There's no crying on the pod,
that
Emily.
Promise.
There's no crying on the pod.
I wanted to share with our podcast listeners first, our devoted Orange Insiders and all of you who tune in post-game, which it looks like a lot of you today, that today was my last Syracuse game, covering Syracuse for syracuse.com Post-Standard. I am moving on to a new job. You'll see it on Twitter shortly. But really bittersweet ending. I think I couldn't have, or really bittersweet to be leaving, but I don't think I could have asked for a better ending in terms of a game filled with excitement and good storylines and good questions to ask post-game and a fun post-game podcast to do after.
I could say this, Emily. So Emily, first of all, has an amazing opportunity that we are so thrilled she gets to chase. But we are going to miss the hell out of Emily around the office. We're going to miss Emily on the digital pages of syracuse.com. I'm going to miss Emily just talking Star Wars. Forget the sports stuff. I know I had a buddy I could always text about not only Star Wars, but the Bear and some pop culture stuff. And I will say this. I know I can speak on behalf of our readers, our listeners here on Syracuse Sports, and so many others. Just, first of all, thank you. Thank you for the amazing job that you did. Thanks for being such a pro. You never know. You get somebody fresh out of college. You're like, how's this going to go? Right? But, man, from the day Emily started, you would think she was around for 20 years. I learned more from her than she could possibly learn from us. She was a true pro, wrote so many great stories, and the people that, got to deal with her, and the people that, at Syracuse, the athletes that she got to cover, all I know were so impressed with her. And I would talk to people when we were in Vegas, and people would talk about Emily. I'd say she's a rock star, because she is. And this new opportunity that she's going to, you're going to see on social media. I'll say this, it's at a higher level of football. I'll let Emily make that announcement on social media, but she's moving up in the world, and we're so proud of you. And I'm going to miss you. I'm really going to miss you. But I know you're going to kill it. That's the thing with these things. It's so bittersweet. Like you said, like you're leaving something that you're doing here, but what you're going on to is going to be incredible. And we can't wait to see you shine at your new opportunity. And boy, I mean, there's so much we did in just a couple of short years here, Emily. I mean, it's hard to top Vegas, right? But we got to do a lot together.
Yeah, I know. We did, and this year just alone, we did some crazy stuff. You got to go on your first road trip with me, and then we did Vegas and the live show, and meeting all the insiders, obviously. And I think it was around the same time. I think one of the first pods we did was the pod unpacking the whole LaQuinn Allen situation last summer and all of that. And so we've done those super serious pods, and we've done some definitely really wacky ones too. And we got challenged to do a podcast every single day of fall camp this year, and somehow we pulled it off without new things to talk about. But it has really been a blast, and seeing the engagement from everyone and getting to engage with each other and with them has just been so much fun.
Yeah, and that's part of it. Like Emily fully leaned into doing this podcast and was, I think it's so, I mean, you wrote so many great stories, but the Fran Brown profile that you worked so hard on this year and the LaQuinn Allen story and how crazy, look, guys, flat out, LaQuinn Allen's not playing football here. If it's not for Emily looking into that story and Annie as well, Annie Hayes at syracuse.com and writing about that. We did lacrosse together and
lacrosse too.
I had to teach Emily lacrosse for about 5 minutes, but then she got it because she's a pro and figured it out and knew how to tell those stories and everything. Like we said, from the Star Wars stuff. And when Emily first got here, I was so thrilled to do this. I made a little Thanksgiving dinner for Emily when she first got here. It was just settling in and I said, man, that kid, she's got to have I keep saying kid because I'm older than you, but like she's got to have a home cooked meal for Thanksgiving. Right. And just, and in the few years you were here, just the way you embraced the community and got out there, that great picture you had on Twitter for so long when Dino told you to enjoy it and you're holding up the beer, right? You did. You embraced this community. And I think you got about as much out of it as you can in a few short years, not only professionally, but personally.
For sure. No, I will always think of Syracuse very, very fondly as a first real home after college, away from home, and a good community to grow up in. And obviously it's weird timing with there still being 4 games left in the season, but you can bet I will be tuning in. I'm very curious to see how the rest of the season goes and if all my predictions hold true. So we'll see.
Maybe we'll give you the secret voicemail line. And
maybe that would be great.
You can chime in.
The voicemail line.
Rocking around, followed by Emily. Well, more to come on that. You're going to be around for a couple more days, but as Emily said, this is the last game that she covered for us, and she'll be moving on shortly to a new and amazing opportunity at the next level of football. And congratulations. We are so thrilled for you, but we are definitely going to miss you. And it was an honor and a privilege to be by your side at that press box. And I'm glad I got to work with you. I am happier I got to know you as a person.
Same. I'm going to miss everyone. I'm going to miss everyone.
And now I'm going to go cry. So thank you, Emily, so very much. Thanks to you guys for supporting Emily's work, reading her work, and all your great feedback and comments on the text line. And when you got to see Emily, like we mentioned, in Vegas and in other places out there, your support for her, it warmed my heart to hear what you guys had to say about Emily and what she did for us. And we're going to miss you. That's going to do it, friends, for this edition of Syracuse Football Postgame. What a send-off for Emily, a 38-31 overtime game at the JMA Wireless Dome. Syracuse is bowl eligible. We'll be back. We don't know what time, the dreaded 6-day hold once again from the ACC.
Yes.
But
tonight, we'll find out tonight.
We'll find out tonight when the Boston College game is. Just a reminder, we'll be doing these after every Syracuse basketball game as well. Season opener Monday night against the mighty Lemoyne Dolphins. So stay tuned for that. But thanks for hanging with us here on Syracuse Football Postgame, presented by Krause Health, the exclusive healthcare partner for Syracuse Athletics. Thank you, Emily.